Let's get down to business.
Thanks for coming out tonight.
I wrote me a manual, a step-by-step booklet for you to get.
Oh, I make money move.
You can't see me, my time is now.
What up, guys? Welcome back to the Fitness Times Business Podcast. My name is Joseph Mencel. I am your host. And guys, I am fired up for this episode of Fitness Times Business. Let me tell you, I am fired the fuck up. But I just want to take a second before I dive right in to frame this episode correctly for you, because I want you guys to understand where I'm coming from in this episode. Instead of just diving right in and I'm ready, but I just want to just take a second to frame this correctly. In business management, one of the most commonly used techniques, and one technique that I use myself, is honey and vinegar when it comes to managing people. The honey side is incentivizing people with sweetness. That's why it's called honey. So you encourage, you incentivize, you be optimistic. You kind of, you draw the best out of your employees by using the sweet honey to get the best out of them. The vinegar side is sometimes you just have to hit people right between the eyes to get the best out of them. Sometimes you need to hit them with some cold, hard truths to get the best out of them. The way I like to manage people, for the most part, is with honey. But occasionally, I need to drop some fucking vinegar in there to get people to understand where I'm coming from. Now, I produce a lot of content over the last couple of months to help you guys through this pandemic period. Even this podcast in it by itself, the Fitness Times Business Podcast, the last 3 episodes consecutively that I've recorded have been specifically designed to help you guys through this pandemic period. We had Rethinking Rona, we had the personal development pandemic, and we had the routine reshuffle. If you haven't listened to those 3 episodes, I suggest that you go back right now and listen to them. If you want to listen to them again, I suggest you do that right now. Those 3 episodes were my honey. And now you're about to get the vinegar. And I'm fired up for this because I am just about sick of the amount of fucking bullshit that is coming out of this pandemic period. It literally makes me just want to jump out my skin. It makes me, oh man, I'm so fucking fired up. One of the things right here, right now, that is becoming blatantly obvious to me is this exposure. And I've mentioned this in the past honey-based content is the exposure of the current pandemic, and it's exposing a lot of things. The one thing that is becoming so blatantly obvious to me is the exposure of entitlement. And it makes me fucking sick. Now, let me just get something straight off the table at the moment, because I know where this can head very quickly. I don't want to go political with this episode. That's not what this podcast is. Not a political podcast. This podcast is a podcast designed to give you guys practical tips in fitness and business for your development as people. And that's what I'm going to do in this episode. So I just want to take politics right off the table. I'm not here to discuss what governments are doing, whether it's right or wrong. It is what it is. And it's leading to what it's leading to. And one of the things that it's leading to is this exposure of entitlement, which is far, 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 far worse than I suspected it was. And I thought it was pretty fucking bad. Guys, there's a lot of people right now who are economically really, really struggling because of the decisions that have been made by governments all over the world. Doesn't matter where you live, doesn't matter what country you live in. Pretty much all governments have made decisions that have crippled their economies, pretty much. And there are some people that are absolutely struggling right now and need all of the government assistance they can get just to fucking survive. That's truth. That's facts. And I just want to put that aside because this podcast is not directed at those people at all. This podcast is directed at the people who are taking full advantage of the economic assistance packages that are being provided by the government. And obviously living here in Australia, being based in Australia, this is going to be focused on the current economic stimulus packages that are being offered by the Australian government. And I just want to reiterate, I'm not here to judge or give my opinion on whether I think they're right or wrong. I'm here to tell the facts and the truth the way that it's playing out at this point in time. This is directed at people who have fallen into the entitlement trap. And guys, I'm not saying that your intent was to fall into an entitlement trap. I'm saying a lot of you have fallen into this trap. And let me explain what I'm seeing here. Let me explain why I'm calling this the entitlement trap. Let me give you guys a couple of examples specific to the Australian economic stimulus packages. And if you don't live in Australia, your government's probably done something similar. The first one is this Keeper Jobseeker situation. And the second one are government grants. So if you're an employee, the JobKeeper/Jobseeker situation is going to be most relevant to you. If you're an employer, that's still going to have some relevance, but it's the government grants as well. So the JobKeeper/Jobseeker situation, just to kind of get the facts out, the job seeker is for those people who are unemployed. That payment on a fortnightly basis has just been doubled by the government. And the government has also said that you get double the payments that you would usually get as economic stimulus, but at the same time, you actually don't have to do anything actively to look for any sort of work. So they've just said, here you go, here's double the payment, here's double the usual money that you get in unemployment benefits, and you don't have to do anything for it. On the other hand, employees who have either been stood down or who are still in work, and there's complexities about this, guys. I'm just generalizing for the sake of making the points I'm about to make. You've got the job keeper situation. So job seeker for unemployed, job keeper for employed or been stood down at this point in time. And the job keeper situation is the government is giving even more money to people, for the most part, who have been stood down and said, you don't have to do anything for it as well. You don't have to, we're going to pay you regardless. Whether you still have employment, whether you've been stood down, whether you're still on the books of an employer, but you're not actually doing anything, it doesn't make a difference. We're going to pay you. And there's all sorts of issues around, how much people are getting paid based on the amount of income that they were earning, and employees having to top that up, or casual workers who are earning maybe $200 a week that are now getting the $750 a week from the job keeper. Listen, it is what it is. The situation is the government is giving a lot of people a lot of money for doing nothing. On the business side, we have these government grants being given out to businesses. So the governments are giving $10,000 grants here, $20,000 grants there, so on and so forth. There's different eligibility criteria. It doesn't really matter. We don't need to go into the details. The facts are businesses are being given money by governments for not doing anything as economic stimulus. So whether you're an employee or a business owner, we've got these economic stimulus packages that have been introduced by the government here in Australia and other governments around the world that have been legislated, where effectively to stimulate the economy, the government is putting money back into the economy. There's a couple of problems with this. And once again, I don't want to get political. I'm not interested in giving opinions. I'm just calling the facts for what they are. There's a big fucking problem when you're giving people money for not doing anything. Whether it's an employee who's employed, been stood down, unemployed, whatever the fuck it is. Whether it's a business that has been completely crippled by the restrictions, hasn't been crippled by the restrictions, whatever the fuck it is. There's a big fundamental economic problem when you're pouring money into the economy and giving people valuable consideration for not doing anything of equal or greater valuable consideration in the other direction. And a very simple example of this is if you are running your own business and you're paying your staff to do nothing, you're not going to be in business very long. Even worse, in this country, the government is putting this money into the economy, and it's money they don't have. It's money that's going to push this country's economy into a budget deficit, which means the government's borrowing money. They don't even have this fucking money to put into the economy. So using the business analogy once again, let's go back to it. Let's say that you're running a business, you're now borrowing money to pay staff to do fucking nothing. It's pretty obvious to see that that's a pretty big fundamental economic problem that we are going to run face first fucking into in the not too distant future. So how does this play into this entitlement trap? How does this kind of all play out? Well, there's a couple of things that I've seen, and this is really what pisses me off. The fundamental problem from a government perspective, from an economic stimulus perspective, stimulating an economy by putting money into economy, giving it to people who are not contributing anything to the economy, and even worse, putting that money in when you don't actually have that fucking money is a big fundamental economic problem. But this is what really pisses me off. It's creating and fostering a culture of entitlement. And let me give you guys a couple of examples that I've personally seen of how this is playing out. From an employee perspective, so we're talking the job keeper, job seeker situation. We've now got employees who are currently on the job keeper side of things, who are being asked to go back to work by their employer, who are refusing to go back to work because they prefer to get paid by the government to do nothing. And in some cases, because of how the government in this country has legislated this, for a lot of casual workers, they actually get paid more to not come to work than if they were to resume their usual casual hours with their employer. That's a big fucking problem. On the flip side, with job seeker, the government said that if you're unemployed, you actually don't even have to do anything to get this job seeker payment. We're going to pay you to not even look for work. You don't have to do a fucking thing. That's a big fucking problem. From an employer perspective, and this is first-hand experience, guys. I went on Saturday night last week to go and get a gift for my mother for Mother's Day. And I went into a shop, and as I'm walking towards this shop, they closed the door. This is 5 minutes before the shop is supposed to close. Now you may think that's not a big deal. It's only 5 minutes. We are in the eye of an economic storm at the moment. And because businesses are being able to access these government grants and starting to develop this culture of business entitlement, they're starting to turn down good business right here, right now. Now, yeah, 5 minutes, closing a little bit early, may not seem like a big fucking deal. But that 5 minutes turns into 10 minutes, turns into 15, turns into 20. How you do one thing is how you do everything, especially in business. So now we've got businesses who are starting to develop cultures of entitlement because they know that the government grants are coming. So they can turn down that customer 5 minutes before closing. They can perhaps not treat their customers the way that they would normally treat their customers because they know that the government grants are coming. They know that the government is going to take care of them by stimulating them through this pandemic period. We then have businesses who are refusing to pivot, who are refusing to pursue new opportunities because they know that the government support's coming. They know that the economic stimulus package is coming. So they start to get complacent, they start to get lazy, they start to get entitlement. So now we have this situation where we have an entitlement trap that not only employees are falling into, but employers are falling into, that the whole fucking economy is starting to fall into. And why do I get so pumped up about this? Why do I get so fired up about this? Because guys, what do you think is going to happen when the government assistance ends? How do you think that's going to play out? In Australia, we know that it's probably going to be the 6-month period from March to September. So by the time we get to the end of September, the chances are there's not going to be no more JobKeeper. There's not going to be the double job seeker payments. They're going back to $300 a week. There's not going to be any more business grants. There's not going to be any more economic stimulus. And sure, it might get extended. That's not the point. At some point, the economic stimulus is going to run out. And we're going to be left with a massive budget deficit, which is a fancy government word for debt. Our economy is going to be in a massive debt. We're going to have this culture of entitlement that has been fostered by this economic stimulus for at least a 6-month period. You guys know, because I've told you in how many different episodes of this particular podcast, how long it takes to change habits and routines. We're going to spend 6 months specifically fostering and building and encouraging entitlement. 6 months. You know how long it's going to take to change that culture? You know how long it's going to take to shift that culture back to a culture of gratitude and humility? Oof. Man. And let me tell you something else that's going to happen when this economic stimulus package ends or dries up. Because this is something I saw this morning and it fired me the fuck up. Our unemployment rate in this country in particular. There's a news story this morning. I was watching it and I couldn't believe what I was seeing because it was the biggest load of bullshit that I have come across probably to date during this pandemic period. It was about the current Australian unemployment rate, how it was expected to be just under 10% and it came in at 6.8% or some bullshit. Completely. It's actually hard for me to even comprehend that this is being reported as actual data, completely skewed by the fact that we have this JobKeeper stimulus package where people are being paid to do nothing. And the fact of the matter is a lot of people on JobKeeper are not going to have jobs when JobKeeper dries up. So what we're actually looking at when the economic stimulus finishes is unemployment in this country of at least 20%. And just so you guys know, if you're not that great with numbers, what 20% unemployment looks like. It looks like there's a room of 10 people who would normally all be employed, and now 2 of those 10 people are unemployed. You've got 8 of those people employed. You've got 10 people fighting for 8 jobs. So what do you guys think this is going to look like in September when we've developed, we've fostered, we've encouraged this culture of entitlement? The economy is in a huge debt. Now, 2 in 10 people can't find jobs. 2 in 10 people won't be re-employed. So you've got employees competing for less jobs. You've got businesses competing for less customers. And even those same customers are probably not going to have access to the same money that they once did because the economy's fucked. So businesses are competing for less customers who are spending less money. And the culture of entitlement at this point is at its worst because it's been allowed to foster and develop for at least a 6-month period. That's what we're heading for. That's where it's going to get. That is the direction. There's no other way to look at it. It's I know for a lot of you this is difficult to comprehend, but this is the fucking truth. This is where we're heading in this country and in pretty much every other country on this fucking planet. If not worse, it's going to look very similar to how it does here in Australia. So let me flip the script for you guys real quick, because I don't like to just do podcasts where I rant and I rave and I get fired up and I tell you guys what I'm thinking about and what concerns me. I like to give practical advice, as you know. And for a lot of you, there's probably a lot of you listening at this point where you're going, fuck, man, like this is me. This has hit me smack between the eyes. I've fallen into this trap. I didn't mean to fall into this trap, but here I am. What am I supposed to do? Or as a business owner, man, you might be thinking the exact same thing. You might go, fuck, this is uncomfortable for me to listen to, but this is really hitting home. This is where I'm at. I've fallen into this trap. What do? Let me give you guys some practical tips. Let me start with the employees. Guys, let me tell you a couple of things straight up. If you are an employee who's been stood down and you are currently receiving JobKeeper payments, and the only time that you've reached out to your employer during this pandemic period is to query where your JobKeeper payments are, come September or come the end of this economic stimulus period, you're probably not going to have a job. And that's just the truth. There's going to be less jobs. And if you haven't reached out to your employer to show value, to show contribution, to show gratitude and humility, and the only reason you've reached out to your employer is for fucking entitlement, you're probably not going to have a job. So the first thing you can do to get out of this entitlement trap is to reach out to your employer and ask if there's anything you can do. You might have been stood down. The job that you were doing might not be a job right now, but offer to do something, offer to contribute, offer to help your employer in any way that you possibly can. If you're being offered work and you're currently receiving JobKeeper or Jobseeker, or there is an opportunity for you to do some sort of work, take the work. Don't do the maths and go, well, fuck, actually, if I turn this work down and I sit at home on my ass and do sweet fuck all, I'm going to be getting paid more money. Because let me tell you guys, when the economic stimulus is over, you're not going to have a fucking job. That's just the truth. If you're offered work, take the fucking work. If you're not offered work and you've reached out to your employer on multiple occasions and there's nothing you can do to assist, take some time to upskill. Because guys, when we get to the end of this economic stimulus period, and you can come back and listen to this podcast just to make sure that I was right, there's going to be less jobs available. So everybody who currently thinks that they're going to go back to the job that they had before this pandemic period hit, you guys are fucking wrong. It's not going to happen. There's going to be less jobs. There's going to be more people competing for the jobs. So you need to do something right now to make yourself more valuable when that period arrives. Because only the most valuable, only the most loyal employees are the ones who are still going to get work. And there's going to be a whole lot of fucking people desperate for that work. What about employers? What about businesses? What can you guys be doing right now? You got to be giving back to your customers, business owners. You got to be doing something to give back to your customers. Just look at what we've done here at the Massive Joe's business. Look at all of the free everything that we have been putting out during this pandemic period, whether it's the content that we've upscaled with let's just take one example, the in the house free home gym workouts, free workouts. So we can help you guys continue to train while you can't access a gym. How about the fact that I'm here at this very table every fucking night until 7:30 p.m. signing by hand cards to go out in every single online order that we send out. And we send out fucking thousands just to say thank you. Because I know how hard it is right now. And I truly appreciate you guys continuing to support this business. If you're a business owner and you think that the business that you had is going to be as easy to continue once the economic stimulus period is over, you're fucking wrong. And that's the truth. So anything that you can do right now to give back to your customers, to give back to your community, to show your customers how much you appreciate their support is going to pay huge dividends for you when you and all of your competitors are trying to generate business from a much smaller customer base who have much less dollars to spend. You got to do it now. And another practical tip for business owners, make the most of every opportunity. If you are fortunate enough to still have any part of your business right now that is still in business, that is still generating revenue or has the potential to generate revenue, you need to be honing in on that opportunity and you need to be making the most of it. If you're closing the door on potential customers' faces at 4:55 fucking p.m. when your shop closes at 5 p.m., you're going to be out of business when the economic stimulus period is over. Mark my words. Make the most of every opportunity, especially right now. Because if you're developing a culture of entitlement as a business owner, which will spread through your entire fucking business culture worse than the coronavirus, on the flip side of this, you're not going to have a business. And that's the truth. Guys, you can tell how fired up I am about this. You can tell why I needed to do this episode as the vinegar to my honey of the last 3 episodes. And I'm doing it not just to have a rant, not just to blow off some steam. I'm investing the time, I'm investing the effort to produce this content for you guys because I know that a bunch of you have found yourself in this trap of entitlement and you didn't intend to get here. I get it. And it's being encouraged by governments all over the world. I get it. I'm producing this not just to hit you between the fucking eyes and say you should know better. That's not what it's about. It's to hit you between the fucking eyes, make you realize that you've fallen into this trap and give you practical tips on how to get out of it. And that's what this episode is about. This episode is do not allow yourself to continue to develop in your own mind a culture of entitlement. Because the worst is yet to come from an economic perspective in whatever country you live in. We may be over the peak of the coronavirus pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, from a physical health perspective, but we haven't even fucking started on the economic effects. Hasn't even started. We're in the eye of the storm at the moment, and that eye is being insulated by economic stimulus packages being given out by governments in every country on this fucking planet. The worst is yet to come, guys. So do not allow yourself to develop in your own mind a culture of entitlement. Take these steps, whether you're an employee, whether you're a business owner, an employer, wherever you fall on the scale, take these practical steps, implement them right now. Because on the flip side, right now is going to be the most valuable practical steps you can take to make sure that when the shit really hits the fan from an economic perspective, if you're an employer, you're giving yourself the best possible chance of continuing to be in business. If you're an employee, you're giving yourself the best possible chance to continue to have a fucking job. Guys, you could have been anywhere in the world right now, but you're here with me. I appreciate that. Until next time, I'll catch you on the flip side. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Fitness Times Business Podcast. Be sure to subscribe, and if you enjoyed listening to this episode, make sure you give us a 5-star rating. Until next time, we'll catch you on the flip side.